Before we start the video, I just want everyone to know that this is a spoiler-free video, but the gameplay will showcase things from chapter 1 and 2. So if you are very sensitive towards minor spoilers and very small things when it comes to this game, I highly recommend you click off or play my video in the background. Listen to it like a podcast, if anything. Basically, a lot of the footage that will be shown in this video is from the promotional material. But regardless, I hope you guys could sit back and relax and enjoy what I have to say about Xenoblade 3. I had a very interesting weekend, to say the least, in terms of playing a certain game. Now, I did cover it a few times in the channel. I sort of made memes of it through my YouTube shorts, and I did a very recent video kind of just watching the Nintendo Direct of it, which is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And yes, this is the video where I share my thoughts on this game because I put in a lot of hours into the game. I'm about 18 hours in and there's still much to go through. It's a 100+ hour game, but I think 18 hours is already enough for me to say, hey, I get it, Xenoblade fans. I really do. I understand why a lot of you guys throw so much money at this game. You guys get very hyped for this game every time Nintendo talks about it. I understand why there's a big following of this game. I actually get it. I understand now. And yes, and now I am actually part of that as well. Playing Xenoblade 3 it's an experience right now, guys, and definitely I'm gonna be so sad once this whole game is over and once I roll in the credits. And it's funny how I'm gonna say this now, but because before I was sort of a disagreement on it, because for context, if you watched my Nintendo Direct, my Xenoblade 3 Direct video, I was sort of, I sort of disagreed on how there's so much content for the game that's gonna be scheduled for release by the end of this year and beginning of next year and so on and so forth. And I sort of disagreed of like how Nintendo and the company itself, Monolith Soft or whatever you call them, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, it seems that to me they're overworking their devs, and I'm still iffy on that as well, if I were to be real with you. But at the same time, I'm like, damn, I'm actually looking forward to the content on what they're making, because I'm already thinking of that, because I don't want the game to be over, and I know it's gonna be over and I'm gonna be sad once it's done, but I'm ready to think of the content that we can consume, and I'm ready, excited to what's to come for that. I'm like, damn it, Xenoblade, why you have to actually be so damn good? So for context, for those who don't necessarily follow the channel, Xenoblade 2, or Xenoblade Chronicles 2, my bad, is my first ever Xenoblade game. Now, I obviously heard about the Xenoblade franchise because I play Smash. Like, I used to be a Nintendo consumer, so whenever Xenoblade comes up, I see it in Smash, or I just hear about it because of Nintendo. It's one of their biggest IPs. I used to be a Nintendo enthusiast growing up. When Xenoblade 2 initially came out, there was so many praises about the game, and eventually, I think the next year after it initially released, I got it on sale because it was a Black Friday sale. I actually had to travel for that game because it wasn't at a local retail store because it was all sold out. So it just got me even more interested in why this game is such the hype. Like, why is this game getting sold out like immediately, and why is everyone raving about this game constantly? So I was very curious on the game. So when I initially got it, I wouldn't say disappointed, but the game just didn't click with me. It was definitely a game where I was like, damn, I'm gonna enjoy it. The quality of the game looks good for a Switch game. It seems that there's much to do in Xenoblade 2, but just overall, I think the game itself, personally to me, it just didn't click with me because either me and the game just didn't explain its combat correctly. I just didn't understand the combat at all, and it became to a point where I just started to die a lot. I put in about 20 hours, 20 plus hours into Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I went in pretty far with the game, but I just kept dying a lot of the times. Like, throughout those 20 hours, I just kept dying. Whether I even dropped the difficulty on easy mode, and I was like, I'm still dying, and I feel like there's something's up. Something's not clicking right. Something has to be up with how I'm playing. And from there on out, I decided to just drop the game because I'm like, you know, I'm giving the game so many chances and myself as well, but it just wasn't clicking. So I just left it as be. I still have the physical copy of the game, and you know what? I may come back to it, but let's just focus on Xenoblade 3 for now. And when I was watching the promotional stuff, the clips, and obviously the Nintendo Direct of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, the gameplay was like, oh, the gameplay looks much more approachable from what I see. Maybe it seems it's also the same. And that's what I was initially worried at first when I booted up the game, was its combat and not me enjoying it. But again, from the promotional stuff that I've seen and clips and other videos, I was like, this game looks really cool for a Switch game. The quality of this JRPG looks very nice. Maybe I should give this franchise another chance. So I did. Last Thursday night, I decided to buy the digital copy because it was releasing early to us people in the West Coast. So I was like, yo, I'm sort of eager to try out this game. Let me see how this game actually is. And also I had leftover money in my Nintendo account. So it was sort of a win-win because I was still iffy with the game and I didn't want to spend like a full price. But I had leftover money, like kind of like a lot of money in my account, so I was like, yo, let me just get the digital copy and we'll see how it is. And my first initial impressions of the game were really surprising and very unexpected because the quality of the game was already good. When they introduced the cutscenes and the animations, they looked very clean and, again, very polished. I can't describe it enough, but it looked really good. And also, when it just transitioned to cutscenes to gameplay, apparently it's possible on the Switch, and Monolith Soft actually did it. They actually found a way to smoothly do cutscene, a very clean, crispy, nice cutscene to gameplay. I didn't know how, but it was possible. They made it work. I was amazed. And again, with the gameplay, I sort of came into mind of having that FF14 mindset. So, I know I'm about to compare the two. Some of you guys may cringe, but I do find the combat very similar with each other. So, for context, I recently played FF14 last year, and I actually enjoyed it. I love FF14. And the combat at first didn't really click with me. But, obviously, playing through several expansions already, the combat clicked, and I really love how FF14 does its combat. I think it's perfect for how it is for MMO. And how I see Xenoblade Chronicles 3 do it, it's sort of similar because there's much more positionals, more strategy, and rotations to do throughout its gameplay. And honestly, having that mindset, you know, that FF14 mindset really helped me click with the game much more. Because, first of all, let me just appreciate the tutorial, because the tutorial is very aggressive in this game. I know that may sound like a turnoff to many people, but personally for me, especially as someone who's trying to actually learn the game, I'm really glad that they're forcing, like, especially it's part of their game design, because whether or not you like it, you have to go through it. And I really do appreciate a lot, because I was very lost in Xenoblade 2. Whether I was trying to look for stuff, whether I was trying to learn the game, I was just lost in every aspect of Xenoblade 2, and I was just punished for nearly everything, and I always just die for whatever reason, because I just didn't simply understand the game. I had a very hard time understanding the game, and that's not really like me when it comes to these sort of games, because I really thought Xenoblade 2 was going to be a game I was going to be very invested in, because it seems like the type of game I would really sink into. But again, it was just a game I had a hard time understanding. So Xenoblade 3, I wouldn't say they do like a perfect job on trying to like teach you the game, but it's good enough to where, hey, if you understand these sort of games and if you are reading the text obviously correctly and putting in more thought into your situations in gameplay, you're just gonna do great. And I did that. I applied that along with having that FF14 mindset. You know, I'm just much more of the experienced gamer compared to when I initially bought Xenoblade 2. And I also put myself into very difficult situations throughout the game once they made me explore the world and introduce like these sub bosses or mini bosses that have much more health or do more damage. So I kept putting myself in those scenarios and tried to get much more of a better grasp as I tried to reach that goal and defeat these larger enemies that are obviously better than me. It took some time again, and I'm not gonna lie, I was sort of getting frustrated of how my learning experience was, because it was a bit disappointing of myself to just constantly be stomped on in normal mode by these enemies that I'm pretty sure that are easy to others. And I know I was only in the party of 3, and I know you could probably come back and have your other party members help you against these fights, but I felt like there was a reason why these certain enemies were there in the beginning of the game, and I felt like it was beatable because that's why it was displayed there. I just kept trying and trying, and honestly, I'm glad that I did that because I was able to, again, understand the game much more, where I was able to feel like once I actually had these victories and these defeats, you know, from these monsters, I was able to learn a lot from them and felt much more prepared for what's to come in this whole adventure. And I was ready to set out, and from there on out, everything pretty much clicked, and I was really enjoying the game from there. And I guess this is a great transition to talk about its gameplay, because that's what really intrigues me the most and what really just keeps me in, because I play a lot of these games for its gameplay. I don't really play for story. If it is good story, then it's a cherry on top, but usually I play games for the gameplay, obviously. And probably you guys are asking, how do you really feel about the gameplay now that you put in 18 plus hours into your playthrough? And to be honest, I think this game has really captured on what I really wanted in these modern JRPGs. It's been quite some time where I felt this experience, because this is a game where it just feels like it's just endless. It just keeps on going with many of its gameplay mechanics, whether you're exploring or having much more newer rotations, skills for your characters, and have all these variety of classes, like the class swap system. That's insane. Like, the game could just keep on going and have a lot more replay value, much more approaches, and have much more a enjoyable experience for not just the hardcore fan base, but also newcomers like me, where we have options to approach these certain things, these certain scenarios. Like when you have like a game design where a game just gives you plenty of things to do, that's probably the best overwhelming experience you could give towards a player. I love those type of games, and I love when I have my options, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 does it perfectly, because a lot of the complaints that I would initially have in my first impressions, you know, with the first hour of the game, they're kind of like, they're just erased, they're gone as you keep progressing throughout the game. I think what's also good about the progression when you're going through Xenoblade is that there's always something new to do. There's always something new introduced or whatever. I understand now where when people play Xenoblade games, they're like, oh yeah, like, you know, there's always something to look forward to. And I get it. There's literally always something to look forward to, whether it is story or legit gameplay mechanics. Like, who knows what they're gonna introduce literally later on throughout like my 50 plus hours of the game, because I'm still in those baby hours. Like, I'm literally still fresh in the game. I'm only 18 hours in, and it's a 100+ hour game. That's honestly insane. I think why this modern JRPG really impresses me a lot is because it really captures of what JRPGs were really envisioned in the 90s and what have people experienced. Because JRPGs in the 90s, they were game changers to everyone. They were true different like experience for people to have and enjoy. That's why a lot of people always talk about like the Final Fantasy games in the 90s, especially FF7, and how it's a 100+ hour game that you could literally enjoy and you could explore and have this journey as your Cloud, and you have this good gameplay and story. There's just a lot of content that it offers, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 does that perfectly in the modern day of gaming. And not only that, you don't have to worry about DLC. You don't have to worry about these certain microtransactions that would ruin your game. Like, it's very refreshing to have a full game to experience without waiting for like a DLC to fix everything up, or a rush game that isn't really polished. This is a truly polished up game that, I mean, yes, it has flaws. It's not going to be perfect, and especially it's running on the Switch, but for what it is and what it offers, it's still very different compared to any other game that I played. Because a lot of games that I personally played, they're very predictable, they're a short amount of time, you know, and I understand that, you know, some games that they just have less hours because they focus on the quality of the content, and that's perfectly fine. I don't really care if games are short. I don't care if games seem predictable on what I'm gonna have for my certain experience. As long as I'm having fun, I'm fine. But Xenoblade, not only that I'm like just new to the series of like how it just fascinates me with the new genre of gameplay that I'm going through, and how it also revives the young me inside, but it's just the fact that like it's such a fun game. It's a full-on polished, full of like content to have in this game, 100+ hour adventure of new content to experience. That's something I haven't experienced in a very long time, and it's just a very refreshing game to come to, and I just never expected to like a Xenoblade game, especially from my experience of 2. Now, you guys are probably asking now, would you go back and play 2? And honestly, yeah, I would. You know, I may just start up a new game just to get a hang of things again, but yeah, I would go back and try it out. I mean, hopefully I would like it. But I think what I liked about Xenoblade 3 in terms of its gameplay was really how it's very simple but yet very complex. Now, I know that sounds very contradicting, but hear me out. This is what you really need to worry about is just the main party members, and just give them accessories and change up their skills or like their moves, and that's pretty much it. And do your rotations right, be positioned right in the throughout the fight, and you're pretty much set, right? But I know there's just much more into that, but that's how I look at it, and that's how I was able to understand it initially when learning the combat. Now, I know Xenoblade 2 is very, again, it's very similar, but I think what threw me off was the blades. The blades were very different, and there was like a whole new mechanic to them, and building these new classes and things, because you could have different blades in the game. And having these different blades kind of give a whole new big overlay of like what to build upon, and that's where I just got thrown off, I think, where I was like, I'm not confident on how to build these certain classes in Xenoblade 2, so I didn't know how to necessarily approach it. Then again, at that time, when I played Xenoblade 2, I haven't even played FF14, so again, I think I'm just much more of an experienced gamer, but I think as well it's just the tutorials on how they literally force you to go through them, and I absolutely appreciate that, so I could understand each and every mechanic for the game. Now, let's talk about the story. Again, this is a spoiler-free video, so I'm not going to go into details of the game. other than the general or vague story stuff that you probably heard or probably saw from the promotional material. Now, I can't say much because, again, I'm only 18 hours in, but the thing what I really loved or noticed about the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 story is the theme. It has very philosophical themes to the storytelling of the purpose of life. Like, what is your purpose and what do you want to do before you leave? And not only that, there's themes of humanity and war, there's politics in, there's a lot of everything in. And I think that's what I really enjoy because it really does, even though this game gets it's super anime, I'm not gonna lie with you guys about that. It's just super anime to me as well, but I really do love its storytelling of how they presented their certain themes to this. And I really much appreciate it because it is very telling of the real world. But it's also the fact that I also love the story characters and the adventure you go with them throughout this journey, because basically your party, all 6 of you guys, were from opposing countries or teams or militaries, and you guys were born to hate each other. And to where it came to the point where they were forced, or not necessarily forced, but they agreed upon to help each other, and now they're like very close friends and basically treat each other like family. I love that a lot. I love the chemistry between all of the party members. I think that's what's really cool about the game. That's what I love about these JRPGs is the friendships along the way, literally. Not to sound cheesy about it, but that's what it is. And I also love the banter, like whatever you guys are doing, whatever side activity like you're doing, they always have something to say, and I really do love that. It really doesn't feel as empty, and it really just doesn't feel robotic as well. Like, they all have their unique, cool personalities, and it's just nice to know them. And certain side quests, you sort of get backstory on not just the world particularly, but other characters like of your party members or maybe other people who are around within that area. And I think that's cool, you know, that it really does feel like a true authentic experience when exploring around these parts of the world, and I really do like that a lot. But the thing, what I really want is this game is a social feature, because I don't know if the game actually has it. Again, I'm in my baby hours, like only 18 hours in. We have 100 plus hours to go, so I don't know if it will ever be introduced. But as of now, I actually really hope there is a social feature similar to how Persona 5 actually did. I know a lot of people sort of meme Persona 5, how it's like, oh, it's a social simulator. But that game did absolutely a great job on giving unique scenarios depending on how you spend your time with your friends in Persona 5. I thought that was absolutely cool because everyone's playthrough could have been different. You know, it was like actually unique because people would spend time with this person and see this certain thing or certain cutscene, and there was also gameplay advantages if you actually spend time with that certain person. And I think that would have been cool in Xenoblade 3, but I don't really think they will do it. I'm not sure again, but just itself, like, I would love that because there's so many party members to know and know more about, and I do wish there is a way to even, like, it'd been nice if they even introduced mini games or something to just even spend time and hang out with your friends like that. I think that's something that a lot of modern JRPGs really do miss out on, is the social aspect for these certain games. But even if it wasn't ever introduced, I'm completely fine by that because honestly, the game is just jam-packed full of content, and honestly, I'm just looking forward to more. And I guess we'll end it off with like the criticisms I have for it. And to be honest, I really don't have any sort of major complaints about the game other than it being on the Switch, because I think the game is really held back and the game looks just way too good for what it is. And I just really hope maybe one day if Nintendo ever makes a better console, hopefully does get some sort of remaster, some rework on how the game performs in terms of its visuals and performance. But I think if we're talking about the stuff that sort of bothered me a bit was the fact that it's cool that this is apparently it's the biggest, largest scale of maps Xenoblade has ever done within its franchise for this particular game. But the thing about it, and even though the maps are very beautiful and you could literally look beyond the horizons, you know, within these maps. It's incredibly beautiful. There's literally nothing within these zones other than just to fight other monsters or maybe do gimmicky stuff. And I think if they're focusing on like open world stuff, maybe there should be a bit more interaction within these zones. And also, I wish there was a bit more traversal for each character. And what I mean by that is how you're able just to simply have like maybe a mount just to travel around, because I still want to explore and discover these new lands and see what's, you know, at these certain areas of the map. And I still want to, again, look at its beauty of how this map is. I still want to just keep on exploring, but I want to explore in a very sort of in a faster pace than constantly like jogging or walking around the map, which is obviously slower. I am aware that there are skills that you could have a speed boost where your characters will start running a bit faster, or you could literally fast travel. But again, I want to explore and see these horizons and the environment, everything, without relying on fast travel systems and all that. I think what's a very important criticism that I actually have for this game is the AI, especially when it comes into battle. They're not really annoying, you know, while you're traveling. It's more so during battle. I noticed that the AIs tend to be split up and don't really concentrate on positionals. Well, sometimes they do, but like when, example, if a character sets down a healing AoE, they don't tend to prioritize that. They don't plan to go into the healing AoE at all. They just sort of stay there in one spot, or they don't even try to move at all, like away from the enemy and try to dodge an attack or something. The AIs just feel really just dumb at some points, and you kind of have to switch your characters constantly if you want to avoid them being hurt and stuff. And there's like 6 party members, you know, later on in the game, and it just gets very overwhelming to keep doing that, and it gets way too much. And I hope maybe in a future update or something they improve the AI somehow, some way. And for people who are playing hard mode, I could only imagine, because I'm only playing in normal, and literally the AI sometimes kind of throw my battles, and I really don't appreciate that one bit. But yeah, like it's a 50-50. Sometimes they do good, sometimes they do horrible. So yeah, that is actually a complaint of mine. But I don't like the criticisms that I've just literally talked about. I don't think it's enough for me to really just give a solid big complaint of the game of why you shouldn't play it. I think the game is still great for what it is. Other than that, I don't think there's really a big issue for me for this game. It's just the fact that they're gonna probably introduce more stuff in the game. I really do hope so. I really do. I mean, because they've been doing that the past 18 hours, so I mean, regardless, I've been having tons of fun, and I'm looking forward to more. I really am, and I'm very excited to just keep playing the game once I'm done making this video. And I forgot to mention the music. I always loved Xenoblade music, okay? Because when I initially played 2 back then, what I really noticed is its music. It's just always so good, and it's always calming, it's always epic. They set the right tones for these certain settings. Like, for example, when you're in combat, you have like the best combat music in the background. While you're traveling, while you're exploring these beautiful vast lands, they have the perfect calming music for you to just be in. The game is perfect with how the music is handled, and I really do appreciate that a lot. And it also reminds me of like many of just, not just JRPGs, but a lot of like games with great soundtracks from back in the day in the 2000s that I really enjoyed. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Who would have known I would have been into Xenoblade? But here we are now. And yeah, comment down below how you guys feeling about the game. Remember, no spoilers in the comments. Let's all be respectful. And thank you again for those who have supported the channel. It has been a wild ride, you know, this past couple of months. And thank you, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was kind of long, but I hopefully you guys again enjoyed it for what it was, and hope to see y'all very soon. Peace off, and dropping a like is very much appreciated. It would help the video a lot. And yeah, I'm just gonna play more Xenoblade.